Hello, this is Mr. Huff, and I'm going to go through a few things about the Lundberg Library project. There were some questions in Activity 3.1.2 that normally would be assigned as homework, but since you're all going to be finding exactly the same answers, I thought we would just kind of go over those together. So, first one is about Noblesville, Indiana. Their building code is the Indiana Building Code from 2014. And that 2014 building code is based on the International Building Code from 2012. They're not using the most current building code. So in the future, when I do this, I'll probably choose things in Midlothian, and we'll need to do a little more research on this before we can identify the building code and the International Building Code that they used as a model. When you look at the use and occupancy of this structure, it's going to be an A3. An A3 is an assembly group building. This is a commercial category. So you're going to see things like, well, let me just read the description. It includes assemblies, uses intended for worship, recreation, or amusement, or other assembly uses not classified elsewhere in Group A. So this is like arcades, art galleries, bowling alleys, community halls, courtrooms, dance halls, exhibition halls, funeral homes, greenhouses, gymnasiums, indoor swimming pools, tennis courts, lecture halls, libraries, museums, places of religious worship, pool and billiards, and waiting areas for transportation terminals. Notice in A3 there is no mention of industrialized facilities or manufacturing, so nothing like that. When we look at the type of construction, there are type 1 through 5. So this building can be type 1, 2, or 3. Type 4 is timber frame construction, and the library we're starting with has steel girders, and it can't be type 5. Type 5 is kind of an open-ended construction, so it has to be type 1, 2, or 3. So since we said this is use and occupancy A, this means that the structural members have to be protected by fire-rated coating. In our case, we're going to be using gypsum board. So those of you modeling in Revit, you'll notice that I wrapped all the columns in a gypsum board column wrap, and this is going to satisfy that fire rating. And we're also using 5.5-inch thick partition walls. Notice that at the end of the description it says 1 hour. And in some materials you'll see 2 hour and 4 hour. These are fire ratings, which say that if you have a fire, this wall will withstand, remain structurally intact for 1 hour before failing. So let's talk a little bit about occupancy. When you're looking at commercial design, there is a formula. It's basically saying how many square feet do you have and how many square feet do you need per person. And it's usually something like 50 square feet to 100 square feet per person. So when we look at the interior size of the building that the public would have access to, this is not the overall floor space, is the floor space that the public is going to be in. It's not going to be your mechanical closets and your staff restroom and stuff like that. It's going to be the public spaces. So when we look at this, run this formula through, I may do some, give you some assignment where you have to calculate some of these values. You always round to the nearest highest next integer. You can't have a 0.3 or 0.73 person. So when you look at this, the first floor of the library, the max occupancy is 177. The second story, because of the limited access to exits, is going to be 46. And then the green roof will be 88. So whenever you add all of those together, you get a max of 311 people. And that's how many people you can have in your building. You may have seen this before. When you go to restaurants, look for the little sign that says maximum occupancy, and it'll have a number like 75 or 120. Restaurants have to post this. This is from the fire marshal, and it tells them how many people can be in there safely. If they go over that, they can't. They're not supposed to let any more people in there than that number. Okay. Let's talk about exits now. We have a formula that basically says, based on your occupancy, there is, and what kind of space it is, you have to provide a certain number of inches of exit. So that's like the width of the doors or the total combined width of doors to supply adequate exit for that floor or space. To perform this calculation, you need to know the inches per person and the total number of occupants, and then you multiply those two together and you get the inches per person. And so our ground floor, we need to have, or for the entire building, we need to have 62 inches or more of exit. And for our upstairs, we need to have at least 41 inches of exit. So what this means for us, as far as design, we need to have, let me move this. We need to have 2 exits on each floor. So upstairs, we're going to use 2 stair systems, one next to the elevator, and I would suggest having one open or another one somewhere. And then on the ground floor, you need the main entrance plus at least one other emergency exit far away from the entrance. You wouldn't want to put those next to each other because it doesn't make sense. Let's talk about zoning a little bit. When you look at this lot in Noblesville, Indiana, on their zoning map, it is designated as code PB, which means planned business. This is going to be used for things like shopping centers, service stations, restaurants, motels, things of that nature. Some of the features of this zone, it has to have ingress and egress for both foot traffic and motor traffic. So you have to provide parking. You need to have service facilities like service stations for getting fuel and that sort of thing. And then you also need to accommodate pedestrian traffic. That's some of the stuff you have to do in a PB zoned area. When you look at the restrictions, the minimum lot size for public or for the planned business area is 20,000 square feet. And our site is going to exceed that. And then the minimum, or not the minimum, maximum height of the structure cannot exceed 3 stories or 35 feet. In the class, I'm going to be a little bit flexible on this because I really want to explore some of the possibilities with Revit and roof structures, and we will exceed 35 feet. So, but if you were a commercial designer, you would need to keep in mind that your structure would not be more than 35 feet. So the model I have provided the Revit users, they've already exceeded that. So we're just going to wink and nod and go on. And those of you at home using Home Styler, I think your max wall can be 9 feet. So you're going to be well under that if you're 2 stories tall. So that's just a real quick rundown of some of the requirements for the Noblesville, Indiana, Lundberg Library project. So you'll need to keep some of these in mind. Mostly the ideas about how many staircases you're going to need, how many exits you're going to need, and that is the main thing. And also what you're designing for. You're designing a structure for a maximum of 311 people, and it needs to be fire rated construction. All right, that's enough for now. Thanks for listening.